I sued my boss because he fired me for wanting to attend a concert. Good afternoon everybody that stumbled on this post. First up, some backstory. During my gap year between studies I decided to work for Company N. Company N was run by a husband, Dave, and wife, Karen, with their son, and basically treated their staff like a small family. All was well for about 2 months, until I realized I had to ask for a day off since I wanted to attend the last Slayer concert the band would give in my country. There was about a month to go, so I sent an email asking for the day off and explaining why. This is where everything started to go downhill. I got a reply from the Karen and her reply was weird. She stated that's not how asking for a day off works. I was confused to say the least. Not sure what to do. I thought she wanted a more formal way of asking, so I wrote a formal email asking for the day off. She shot an email back. I really had to think it through what I was doing, which made even less sense to me. But I was hopeful since I never really got a specific no. The next workday rolls around. I arrived, lock up my bike and headed inside ready for work. I immediately started looking for Dave to ask for answers. Before I could even open my mouth, he asked me, "Do you still want to go to that concert?" I didn't expect him to ask this, so quickly answered, "Yes." The only thing he said back was, "Okay, take off your vest and you can go home." I was stunned, and while the words started to sink in I looked at my colleagues which were just preparing for opening. When it finally sank in, anger flowed in. I am not a confrontational person, so I simply took off my vest and gave it to Dave. Without a word I left and started biking home. When I got back home, I told my mother what happened. We started sending emails for extra information and got very Karen-like emails back. After a couple emails which went basically nowhere, I looked up the laws for immediate dismissal. After reading up about it I learned that, in my country, somebody can only be immediately fired when caught stealing, committing fraud, the person isn't able to do the work, or refusal to do the work. I did neither of these. A day or two later I met with my attorney and began the steps to sue Company N. I told my lawyer what happened in detail and he was very confident I was in my right and she was not. So, after trading even more emails between the three of us, we went to small claims. I came prepared in a suit with my attorney in tow. And Karen showed up. Alone. I guess she assumed she won because she thought she was in her right. The trial began and I was as professional and objective as I could be. Karen did the same. Well, for about half of the trial. When she realized evidence was piling up against her, she resorted to calling me a spoiled brat, among other things I don't know the English translation for. I'm safe to say that was the point the judge ruled in my favor. As per usual I had to wait a month before I got the verdict black on white in the mail. But I won. It may have taken about 6 months from the moment I was told to go home to the point those 6 months of pay were transferred to my bank account. But it was 100% worth it. In the end I went to the concert. It was the most awesome and most profitable concert I have ever been to in my life. TLDR. Got fired without valid reason and sued the company for it. And I won. Now to the comments. Did you ever figure out what their deal was? Did they object to the band Slayer or something? OP replied, "I actually have no idea. She sent some cryptic emails and expected me to understand them. If she would have given me a clear no, I would have understood and moved on. I'd not be happy though." First off, great concert. Saw them out here on the same tour. Loved Phil Anselmo's new group also. So, was this family very religious perhaps? Slayer, at least growing up 20 years ago, always had the rumor amongst adults to be super evil death metal blah blah. There was even the rumor that the name was an acronym for Satan laughs as you eternally rot. If this couple was older, religious or conservative, then perhaps they fall into these ridiculous beliefs. Just a thought. Either way, I'm glad you won. Never tell your boss why you're taking a day off. You get a certain number of days off. Just tell them the days you want to take them. Giving them more information than you need to will not help you. OP replied, "Thanks for the tip." To add, the exception to this is when you are asking for something unreasonable. Depending on your culture or laws, specific events allow greater latitude for time off, such as funerals or medical appointments. I love that she was so confident she'd win that she showed up without a lawyer. Some people really do live in their own bubble. Glad it worked out for you, and glad you managed to enjoy that concert. You rock. I sued my dad without a lawyer to get full custody of myself transferred to my mom. Mind you, it was quite a different situation than this one. But I remember I was so scared when we showed up at court and he had his lawyer with him. 14-year-old me did their goddamn homework and his lawyer ended up folding the minute he realized my dad didn't have a chance before the judge. He was so pissed Lamau. If you wouldn't mind, this story actually seems really interesting. Tell us more please. Sorry for my poor English, it's not my first language. Proceeds to use better English than most native speakers. I do the same when I, rarely, write something in Spanish. Not because I'm good at the language but because I spend like an hour agonizing over it. Yeah, this kind of qualifying statement is unnecessary. But the writer is under the pressure of anxiety. However, if it were actually a humble brag, I wouldn't even be mad. Learning a secondary language is something worth being proud of. Some people are insane. I worked for a guy that only had one job his entire life and that was holding a sign for a restaurant. After close to a year, he started complaining about money quite frequently and I had just got out while I still could. It was a big project so I gave him 3 months notice. I also offered to train him how he could do the job himself because if he ran out of money, then he could continue the project and I also offered to work 2 days a week after the 3 months was up if he could not find another editor. To this day he is furious that I left him and abandoned the project. 3 months notice was just not enough because this guy thought that he owned me. I have had this happen to me before with my old boss. I was offered a better position with a lot more prospects and pay but I knew it would impact the company. So I worked twice over my notice period to help out and make sure they had time to fill the post. I even offered to come back on a weekend and train the new person. On my last day he asked me if I was really going and why I wasn't just going to stay. Insane. Your English is great. Employers count on their employees to not know the law or care enough to pursue it. Nicely done. Opie replied, "Thank you. I'd like to know what she called you in court lol. Spoiled brat is indeed an English term, usually used by people trying to make you feel poorly about yourself. Not really the same but similar. When I was in college, I had a shit job at McDowell's. Job market at the time in my college town was terrible so it was all I could get. I had worked in kitchens all through high school as a line cook and kept looking for those jobs while being the drive-through voice at McDowell's. I finally landed an interview at a good restaurant in town on the same day that Zach Galifianakis and Jim Gaffigan were scheduled to perform at my school. I hadn't planned on going to the show since I had a drive-through voice shift scheduled the same night. The restaurant offered me the job at the interview so I was able to quit McDowell's and go to the show all in the same day. One of the best days of my college life. Opie replied, "That's awesome. This is not meant to be antagonistic, but were there other conflicts with them prior to this, or are you saying that everything was perfect, then suddenly they flipped out over a request for a day off?" Opie replied, "Everything was just fine until I sent the email. This reminds of when my ex took me to court to lower his $150 child support payment because he rarely works and calls it being self-employed. He started out fine but when he started losing and couldn't provide tax returns showing he was self-employed he got really angry and was being an ass and super defensive to the judge. They ended up raising my child support to $450 per month." Beautiful. Man, seeing other countries actually protect their workers makes me bummed to live in the US. I could get fired for looking at my boss a weird way, or simply because he feels like it. So weird I had to scroll down to find the first comment on this. Yes, as Americans, we have less rights / freedom / opportunity / etc. Your boss can fire you for any reason, except for being gay / religion / color of your skin. And the evil part of that, this law is called right to work. So, you could have been fired for wanting to go to a concert the owner doesn't approve of and there is nothing you can do about it. We pay more in taxes and have less health care, less security at work, more school debt for our children, more school shootings for our children, and now more coronavirus illnesses. And the MAGA crowd sees nothing wrong with that. Came here to say this and found this chain. My wife is currently being worked into the ground by an overzealous VP who cares about literally nothing other than numbers and dollar signs. Everyone in her department has cried at least once this week. They all work 16-hour days and usually 7 days a week. Most of that day is being screamed at by parents who don't understand why they can't magically control COVID and tell them what the future will be like in 3 months. And all this for under $50,000 a year. They have quarterly raises and a lot of information to keep up with personally for the meetings that go with these raises. The VP has stated that the assessment meetings will still be happening but the raises will not, even though each member on the team brings in tens of millions of dollars for the company each year. It's not even my job and I'm so ducking over it for her. But what are you going to do? Nobody is hiring for your position in this economy, so we'll bleed you out and then ask your corpse why their reports are late. Is very much the vibe these days.